I can't think of a single faster way to murder a monster movie than by having a weak relationship between the protagonists and the monster they're fighting. And since it currently reigns as the highest grossing horror movie ever, I decided it'd be worth trying to figure out what was so special and effective about the relationship between Pennywise and the Losers Club. Sure, he's got the advantage of being able to personalize his appearance to match each of their individual fears, but I think there's a more fundamental reason why Pennywise is such a perfect matchup for the kids of Derry. And the reason is that, at his bones, Pennywise is really a kid himself. And even if you're only looking at the superficial things, there's a lot of clues of that being the case, like how obsessed Pennywise is with satiating his immediate urges, or his theatrical need to be constantly performing and putting on a show, and the tantrums he throws when his performances aren't received the way he wants them to be. And then there's the fact he chooses a clown to be his default form. Their presence at fairs, circuses, and birthday parties has pretty much permanently cemented clowns into the lexicon of childhood tropes. And Pennywise choosing for a clown to be his default form seems like it's not only an act of desecration, but also a symbol of the fact that, just like he chooses to look like a warped clown, Pennywise himself is a very warped embodiment of childhood. I mean, if you took a really maladjusted child, gave it superpowers, and made fear and human flesh taste like candy, Pennywise would be pretty much what you'd get. And the fact he embodies so many of those darker characteristics of childhood really serves to drive home the fact that the story of It is one about the loss of innocence. The Losers Club are joined together by the commonality of having parts of the innocence they're owed as children stolen from them, by losing family members, or being socially ostracized, or by being abused by a parent. Those losses are ones they've suffered separately and in different ways, but Pennywise represents the most universal loss of innocence that eventually happens to all children, and a realization that's one of the things that really begins a child's transition to being an adult. Pennywise's awakening once a generation to prey on children is symbolic of the fact that as kids grow up, they inevitably lose the innocence of not understanding their own mortality, and have to learn to face the eventual certainty of death. I'll admit in the past, I've always thought of innocence as some kind of moral purity, or at least as being free from the marks that are left by the darker parts of life. But one of the ways the Merriam-Webster dictionary defines innocence is not only a lack of worldly experience or sophistication, but also simply as a lack of knowledge. And that's a really important distinction to make, especially in the context of the story of It, because even at the very beginning, none of the Losers Club have been left untouched by the harsher, brutal aspects of life, with Bill really being the last to remain unscathed until he loses Georgie. So now we know the word innocence can also very often be used to describe an ignorance of something. And since children are born completely ignorantly innocent of a lot of things, part of being a good parent is giving your kid guidance on important concepts like how they should view other people, how to interpret emotions in themselves and in others, and how important it is to moderate the urges they feel. But what would happen if a person was trapped in that rotting innocence for their entire lives, and born with a brain that wasn't able to learn or even recognize the existence of things like empathy or urge control or even morality? Or in other words, all the things that let you see other human beings as people. Well, you'd get someone like Ted Bundy, or John Wayne Gacy, or Pennywise. And one of the ways to tell your run-of-the-mill murderer from a psychopath is that rather than killing or tormenting someone in a fit of jealousy or rage, a psychopath will do it simply because they see other people as objects, which is not only one of the most terrifying qualities of the disorder, but interestingly, it's also what ends up being Pennywise's weakness. Because he doesn't just lack empathy or any filter for the urges that come from his violent psychopathic hunger, he's also spent hundreds of years looking at humans as only being objects at his disposal. He's got no concept of his own mortality or that death is actually even a possibility for him, because how much of a threat can a bunch of objects really pose? His psychopathy has trapped him into being innocent in regards to death like a young child would be, and that he's witnessed death in a detached way and obviously even caused a lot of it, but never strays towards applying the thought of it to himself personally. In fact, it seems to me like feeding off the terror of his victims is in some ways an effort to never have to consider the truth of his own very real vulnerabilities. And that fact, the fact that Pennywise is a twisted reflection of the same innocence that he feeds on, plays a huge part in how the Losers Club are able to defeat him. And it's not by actually killing Pennywise like would be the case in most monster movies. Really, they defeat him by forcing him to realize the truth about himself. They defeat Pennywise not by killing him, but by forcing onto him the same realization and the same loss of innocence that he's been violently forcing onto children himself all along. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see others like it, make sure to show me by hitting like and subscribing.